Christine.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I see some many familiar names. I don't see your faces, but I do see your names, and I see some of your faces. So it's great to see you again. And I am going to take questions. Actually, I'll take them as I go. So if you open up your chat, make sure you have chat open and it's addressed to everyone in the little blue line there. Then I just keep glancing over and see what questions we have. Sometimes it's nice to have a question answered when you're on the topic. So I'll try to get to them. If I don't get to them, then Liz has said she'd keep them to the end and I can answer them then. Okay. All righty. So let me screen share and put up the basis for the presentation here. Okay. All righty. All righty. And this was the topic that was requested, what judges want in competition, what they look for. And I'm coming fresh off of a judge's training that some of you folks are familiar with. But this particular program was constructed for you, especially for you, to focus on the things that you wanted to focus on. And I also want to tell you, you might want to take notes because at the end, we are going to do a little, I hate to call it a test, but it's I'm going to show you images and I want to hear from you using the language that we're using here, what you think they did well, but mostly what is amiss with them, because that's where we're going to end. Is talking about things to avoid. Okay, so let's get to it. I do base my information on the rules and regulations that I helped to write and that are in the F3C competition. And every competition, unless you may already know this, but a lot of people do not go beyond their local and their state for competition. And if you do, it's quite an eye-opening experience. And I have done that. I did local art shows. I did international digital shows. And it's really fun to see how your images stack up. Sometimes it takes many tries to place or do well, but it's so worth it. And the thing you have to do is you have to study the instructions. You really have to study them and keep referring to them because they are different from competition to competition. And one little thing will throw you right off and and then you won't be able to compete, or you'll have to modify your image or whatever. So I mentioned that for a couple of reasons. One is that I did look over your rules again and your categories, and they are kind of an amalgamation of at least two recognizable organizations, one of them being F3C and the other being PSA. They're great. Your rules are great. You've decided on what you wanted to choose for categories and everything. Those are big decisions. And so your category is a little bit more like PSA than F3C, but it doesn't really matter. It's good for you. It's good for your brains to learn how to enter into different competitions. And so this is the homepage of F3C, as you probably all know. And competition, this word isn't in black before I click on it, but competition has a lot of information for you in there. Of course, how do you submit images? And I wanted to also encourage you to use the galleries, because the galleries, I'm going to show you a little excerpt from the galleries. But we have years and years of competitions for every year in digital alone, and then 4 in print. So 8 every year. And we have all the results stored in this website with all of the ribbons. So you can look at the different years and see what judges want just by looking at those images. And believe me, it's quite a quite a study on what things impress the judges. I did an analysis of it for color, and found that yep, sure enough, winning images usually have a very definite color scheme, and it really is brought together with the color. So that was just one aspect of composition that we're going to talk about today. Let's see, the other thing, of course, the other big area is rules and regulations. That's critical for you to get familiar with when you're, and print them off is the best thing to do, and consult them repeatedly, or you can just go over to competition rules and regulations. There's a video that covers a lot of things, a very short video, it's like 6 minutes. There's all the categories are described, and after each category, there are examples to let you know what goes in that category. And then there are examples of what doesn't go in that category. So we're trying to be as helpful as possible. This is a very inexpensive way to learn and improve your photography. And we do encourage you to give it a shot. So if you go to competition and instead of submit images, which is where competitors go, you go to galleries, and this is what you get. You get this whole panel here where you can change the information that you want. So if you, the digital competition is ongoing right now, so you're not going to get any winners there yet. So you would change it with these arrows and maybe find another. This is not live, so I can't demonstrate it, but you can find the last competition that was judged. And you can even hone in on your own camera club if you want to, or not. You want to sort it by score so you can see which ones are blues and on down, and then descending. And then you must hit this display button. You must hit that to change it. Otherwise, it won't get changed. So this is just an example. This is an example of one of our gallery pages, and this happens to be creative. There might even be from the last one, the very last one. And of course, then you will be able to click on them and get a larger image. And but wouldn't it be informative to know what kinds of images generally do impress judges? And obviously, the ones with the higher scores are the ones you want to look at first and study them. And then the ones with the scores going down are also important. All of the ribbon winners can teach you quite a lot. So you want to try that. In every category, we have that. So I want to start off with a little chat, and I can talk and read your chat at the same time. So I want you to be encouraged to type something real quickly in. We have 2 images here of cactus, 2 landscape images, and one of them is a winner and one of them is not. And just off the top of your head, in phrases and notes, please type in what you see is the main difference between the one on the left and the one on the right. However you want to phrase that. The one on the left is, as you're looking at the screen, of course, and the one on the right is a daytime rendition of cactus. So let's see what we have. We have people already braving it out. Okay, very good. So okay, interesting sky, dynamic colors on the left. Yes. And the sky on the right is somewhat bland. The one on the left evokes mood. Yes, it's really got a story to tell with the mood that it has. The one on the right doesn't. It's more of a snapshot. There's contrast in the one on the left, isn't there? Contrast in light, contrast in color. And there is nice color on the one on the left. Color is important for a good visual experience. More dynamic range. There is clutter on the one on the right, isn't there? There's kind of this shaggy bush stuff in the background, right? And right. One of the big things is there's no real area of focus on the right, whereas on the left you see this lone cactus inviting you in, and then you have the line of mountains. So you've got a lot of composition done right on the left, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what is it. I mean, a judge wants to look at an image and connect with it somehow. They want to have some connection. So if it's just a pretty postcard or something you want to show your relatives or something, that's not going to do it in a competition. But if it's something that has mood, has a story, has a lone cactus standing there, has some beautiful red rock mountains that you've heard about in where was I? Phoenix, Arizona. Then you're going to appeal so much more quickly to a judge. They want to have a good visual experience. They want to have a very positive visual experience. So let's look at the key things that create that good visual experience. And this list can be changed and modified and shortened and lengthened and all kinds of things. But these are the things I'm going to focus on today and show you some good examples. You definitely have to have a subject that is focused somewhere. Okay, we're not talking about abstracts. We're talking about a good artistically done image. You have to have something that you connect with, right? The eyes or the face or the water in the center of the landscape. You want to have good placement in the frame, good awareness of where it's placed in the frame, how it's framed within the frame, how the relationship of other things with the subject is, because everything in your frame is going to be seen by a judge. So you can't have things that are messy and accidental. You really have to try to find a situation where everything in the frame is important and it's referring to the subject. A clean background, and backgrounds are so important. Over and over again, we talk about backgrounds, and I'll give you some examples. And with landscape, it's a little bit different because you've got more than just a background. And then leading lines. And I know you've heard the term, but let's look at what a difference it makes when you pay attention to having lines and, of course, pleasing color. So look at how crisply focused these birds are. But the part that's very crisp is the eye, right? And the action. So on the left, this egret has a beautiful face, a beautiful eye, and that is going to draw a judge right in. And then you look at the rest, and some of it's in motion, which is fine. Okay, so this is in motion here, so it's fine that it's soft. This is beautifully detailed, and the action of the bird skimming, dragging his feet along the top to stir up the fish is beautifully focused. So the important areas are focused: the face, the eye, the action, and then some of the detail in the wings. You'll always want to see some detail in the feathers. And it's similar with this picture on the right of the eagle. You can just barely see his eye, but you know what? It's plenty, because the activity and the story is so wonderful. And if you look at closely at the fish, it's a little soft. It's a little soft, but that's okay. There can be some soft things in your image. In fact, you want to have You want to have some things that are soft to balance out the really sharp things that you have. Okay, so something out of focus right away will not let you get a ribbon in any competition. Even with this bird, even the beak and the eye are not really sharp. If he had the head that was all sharp and then some softness in the wings, that would be okay because he's shaking. He'd have motion blur. The feet are nicely sharp. Unfortunately, this is where the camera focused, was at this level, and everything closer or farther is out of focus. So you don't have to have everything focused. You have to have the essential story focused beautifully. Here is the essential story. And this maker very cleverly used very shallow depth of field. It works beautifully. It works to put a focus on that subject. And the other things in the rest of the picture are not important in terms of seeing the detail in it. So what is a focused landscape? Well, this is a focused landscape. This is quite beautiful. This, the story in this was clearly the rocks. That was the story, the rocks and the waves. And so you have to be able to see those rocks. You have to be able to appreciate the texture. It's all very beautifully sharpened. The waves were obviously done with a long exposure, you know, so, and the rocks weren't moving, so they came out really well. So you have this very interesting detail of slow movement of waves. And then the background was, to me, just a good background for this story. So I would actually call this story something about the rocks, because I feel like that's the story. But it certainly didn't hamper the judge's appreciation of this image. Okay, so that was very quickly focus. And I can't, you know, we have a short period of time. I'm not going to cover, you know, how to set up your camera and all of that. But just to tell you, people are taking more pictures with cell phones too, and not all cell phones are created equal. So if you have a cell phone that doesn't have a really good camera system, most of the time it shows with aberrations, color aberrations, and lots of other things. So just be very, very careful if you're submitting cell phone pictures into a contest. So placement in a frame is another thing. Where do you put the subject? Where does the subject go in the frame? Is it center, right smack in the center? That's fine. It could be right smack in the center, or it could be slightly off to the side, which gives a little dynamism to your picture. But the one thing that is very important is to give space around your subject. So here's just enough space around these jumping horses and just enough space around these walking folks in the rain, right? Just enough space. Very often there will be either too much space or not enough space in an image. And this is framed within the frame. That pleases the judge no end. The horses are framed by the foliage, and the folks walking are framed by the old buildings and the old streets, all of the antiquity. So those are just wonderful things to have. You don't always come upon it. Here's an example where placement in the frame, well, I'm not sure it was thought out very well. There's two examples. This one on the left, I see that there is a diagonal line here, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. And I'm not really sure what the subject is. There's nothing that stands out in this. It's kind of just a lot of trees in the water. And it's kind of cut. You kind of abruptly cut on the right, abruptly cut on the left. And so you don't get a sense of what is the subject that the artist has carved out for me. What am I supposed to be looking at here? They want to know, the judges. They don't like a lot of mystery. The other example is there's just way too much in the frame. It's a great little slice of cafe life in France, but it's not a great artistic photo that's going to compete well, because you don't know whether the subject is down here and nobody's looking at you. So there's one person taking a cigarette smoke, which is kind of interesting. And then there's all of this in the background. And nothing is really kind of focused in on as the special subject. Okay, so what about these two? How about the way that the one was framed on the left and that the one was framed on the right? The placement of the animal in the frame. Was there space around the animal? Are you getting a good sense of what the story might be from the way that that animal is placed? The left one is definitely too tight on the bill. It's way too tight, I have to say. This is a moving bird, and he's just about to bash himself on this this frame. He's looking ahead, but there's no ahead even permitted in this frame. He needs space. He needs space. He needs space all around him. But sometimes you do want to get in close. And so you are going to crop wings and such off. Don't crop off the space, though, around the main subject. And if the main subject is the head and the spoonbill of the roseate spoonbill, then you've got to give this space to him here. He needs much more space, much more space. I mean, I would give a couple inches or more on the bottom and the side. And then you can crop other things. And then you would, your subject would be something about the, the spoonbill, or maybe he's landing. What is this posture? It's an odd posture. That could be the subject of it. But the other one definitely has lots and lots of space around it. Okay. So with all the space, how do you fill that space and give some dynamism to the image? Because that's one of the things that the rule of thirds does. And it's not a rule. It's not a rule. It's just a guideline. This is a flower that could have just been in the center and presented as a beautiful flower. But the maker wanted it to have a story and wanted it to have some movement. So putting it off center like this, and yet finding a good place to crop it so that you didn't feel like you were cutting off things that were essential, was really aided by the rule of thirds, by this grid that you can put over your image at any time. And I have a little bee in here, which very easily can get lost. But when you put something in an intersection point of the rule of thirds, you tend to notice it more. You tend to notice it more. And then the spiral was kind of overlaid on that also to show you that these are just two different guidelines that basically talk to you about setting things off to the side or in a corner of your image. And when you would do that, and this is an example of when you would do it, because there are things leading to it. There are petals leading to it. And also you could look at the thirds as taking a whole third horizontally in the middle and on the edges, and then taking a whole third vertically and looking at what's in those sections. Okay, so I have a flower that I want to have be the center of attention, and then draw, and then a little attention on the bee. So I gave it a grounding. So it's sitting on petals. Um, but I also use the center third to think about wanting it to reach into that center. I didn't want it to just sit down in the lower third. I really felt like this is something that needs to be centered, at least horizontally,
Hmm.
if not vertically. So just guidelines. Now, how do you look at a landscape? Here's the landscape. And I just added these white lines. What is the background of a landscape, right? The background of a landscape can be the actual background, the sky, the mountains, the leaves, the trees. That could be a background. But there's actually more than background in a landscape. There's actually layers that you always have to acknowledge, and you've got to take a look at your front layer, which is your foreground, your middle layer, which is very often but not always the subject, and then the background. And by doing that, you can organize what you want in the frame in a nice spatial relationship. So the subject is a little off to the side. This is the main subject, a little off to the side. There's a curving line of ground that it's bringing your eyes to the subject, and that is also sharp. It doesn't have to be tack sharp, but it shouldn't be a big blur in the middle, in the front of the image. And then it brings you into the subject, which is just about along the third horizontally. And this is perfectly on the third. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the fact is that the background is just taking 1/3 of this image. And in an image where the bottom 2/3 are the most important, that makes perfect sense. We're going to see another one like that. So the big story is in the bottom 2/3. And you see too that the background is a little soft and faded. That's very natural for a landscape. When you're looking at landscape, the background for this landscape, although it had some beautiful autumnal colors, that wasn't the main story of this. The mill was the main story. So they really very wisely kept this a little bit muted and soft, so that the thing that really stood out was the mill and the water and the reflection. So much in this. You have to think about how you're going to organize this so it's not just a bunch of stuff overwhelming it. The decision has to be, what is the subject, and how do I make sure that it's placed in a way in relationship to the other things that it is clearly the subject. So background, the simpler backgrounds in life. And I want you to take a look at this illustration while I'm speaking, and see if you notice something about the illustration and what the purpose is. But a background isn't just the background, even if it's a bird. It's everything around the bird, it's the foreground, and the background is probably the most important thing. It can't be cluttered. It has to be orderly. It has to be relevant to the bird. It has to support the bird or whatever the subject is. You don't want it to distract from the subject, but you do want it to add to the story, so it might have some context. Anybody notice what happened in this picture down here where I don't know why. In this picture down here where the person did not look carefully at the background. Do you see yet? Okay, Max just got it. After a prolonged moment of staring, he just got it. Right. I mean, you've got to, people are so intent on what's right in front of them, they forget to look at the background. So you do have to look at the background. And just in case anyone missed it, I wouldn't want you to feel left out. But basically, the background says the anal kingdom rather than the animal kingdom. Yes, Roxanne, you got it. Okay, so here's a couple of pictures with the background that's beautifully supportive of the animal or the flower or whatever subject you want. The colors are supportive. It is not busy or disorienting. This one on the left is a creative image, and the one on the right is a regular nature image without the hand of man. I know that's one of the important things in your rules. I don't know if you use that expression, but that's an old expression. And this is just, you know what, this is just a portrait, but it's done so beautifully that it did well in competition. Because, you know, they say that action, story, all of that is important. The story here is all of the fluffed up feathers. It's hard to get that kind of a picture. You see that there is some softness in some of the feathers, but that's okay. The face is very, very sharp, and all of these other gorgeous feathers are there for the enjoyment. And the background is just, I mean, even the ripples create this frame around the bird. It's wonderful. And then with this lilies and lotuses, you know, at the botanical gardens are surrounded by buds and grasses sometimes, and lily pads. And you have to be very careful about how you present that, because the lily pads can dominate the lilies. And so you have to work with it in post-processing, but you also have to choose just the right flower. And this is what I speak of. I mean, these lily pads are fascinating, aren't they wonderful? And all the little ferns in the water, the floating ferns, and the lily is gorgeous. However, this picture is not going to do well. It is au naturel, if you will. The judges want the maker to make careful decisions and to make careful selections. And this looks like a careful selection was not made. An effort, maybe, where the flower was taken against the circular lily pad, but the colors are not helping each other. And all this other extraneous stuff around it. So, you know, there's a difference between taking an image for competition and taking an image for documentation, or for your files, or for a study of something, or for showing your friends and family. Now, this is an incredible story, this Anhinga story of the parent Anhinga and the baby Anhinga doing exactly the same movement. I mean, it's really hard to catch that, because, you know, baby Anhingas just move. I mean, they move randomly. And yet it looked like the baby Anhinga was being taught something by the parent. It's a great story. The background is not, however. It is not a great story. It is kind of a mess. And it does not show off this action, this activity very flatteringly. So it's not going to do well in competition, even though the story is so cool. How much do reflections like on the left matter? Do you mean, are you talking about the flower? Should we go back to the, or here? The lily, this lily right here. How much do they matter? Reflections are powerful. They're wonderful. The reflections here were just rendered in a very creative way. Reflections is a whole study in and of itself, because sometimes you need to show a certain amount of the reflection for it to have an impact, have a positive impact. Sometimes you want that reflection to be toned down. You don't want it to be, sometimes you want it to be a perfect reflection. especially if the water was not moving and it was a sunny day. You could get a perfect reflection. So reflections matter in that, are they done well? Are they done well? Are they stealing from the subject, or are they part of the main subject? Do you have enough of it to give a sense of it? All of those different questions. Okay. So which one were we at here? We're talking about the background. Now, the reality is, and I notice you have a documentary section too on your rules. The reality is that when you go to certain activities, you're not going to be able to take something without a background. This is a high scoring image, very well done image, that the maker decided to come in very close to minimize the background and get this wonderful horse action, the wonderful action of the person falling off the horse with actually some of his expression showing, and kind of overcame the background in this case. So that's something to consider as well. And you're going to be allowed more messy background in a category like documentary, because it's taking a moment in time. It's getting the story is most important. It's a most important thing. So that's one of your folks. Done. Okay, leading lines. And why is it even important to pay attention to leading lines? Well, the subject is the most important thing in an image. You can draw attention to the subject with lines. You can move the eye around the image. You can give depth and dimension to the story. Really think about those things, the purpose, because if you keep the purpose in mind of leading lines, then you're really going to enrich your photography. Just keeping that it does all of these things. And I'll show you examples of how. There are also many types of lines, and we're going to go over some of those. So here is an image that I did well with. It has many strengths. It has the pleasing colors, and it has a directional light coming across the image. But it has also these wonderful lines in it. It's taken at a diagonal, so you're moving the viewer's eye in a diagonal across the picture. And let's look at some of those lines. I'm letting you look at it for a minute so that you can see if you can figure out what all the lines are in this. And then I'm going to show you what they all are. See if you can, kind of trace it with your finger and decide what lines you're seeing here that gives it depth, that gives it, gives the focus more on certain areas. And okay, so I'm going to reveal it. Lots of diagonals. The clouds are coming in at a diagonal. Diagonals are very powerful because they suggest movement. In the human brain, that's what it means. And then we have a diagonal over here, and it may have been somewhat subtle, but they're both moving into the picture. You could look at it that way. It's coming into the picture rather than away. And then you have a diagonal coming from the sun across this rock, which is, it's lit this water, it's lit the rock, and it's lit the close rock. So it brings you right into the image because you have a lit rock. Then you have this diagonal going down the beach, right? You also have a little diagonal in the wave back here and a crest. You've got little triangles in these rocks here. Triangles are wonderful shapes to use or to capture. A triangle here in this mountain, this rock, it looks like a mountain, this rock here, right? So look at the difference between one that was thought out very carefully. Oh, there's also a line leading you in with the foam on the sand. And look at this picture. It's a very horizontal picture. There's nothing that's really featured, especially the clouds are kind of chopped off and going out of the scene without really having a lot of great purpose here. There is a little piece of diagonal coming in on the sky, which is probably the strongest part of the image. So this is a contrast between an image that has lots of consideration for the angle it was taken at, and this image with very little consideration for the angle it was taken at. Not that you can't take a picture like that, a beautiful beach picture like that, but it would have to have a lot more giving you direction and focus, and this one just doesn't have much of anything doing that. Here's another one that Liz. It's a wonderful, wonderful image. The image has lots of line. It was carefully, you're carefully led into the image with this beautiful piece of rock that has been lit by the sun. And so it has the color of the sun on it. And then as you go from this lit rock to the sun, you see all this wonderful radiating rays that kind of say, and here's the rest of my beautiful image. And you get to appreciate all of the areas that it's pointing to. You also have the leading line of the river, which is curving. Lines that curve and arch are beautiful. And then you have the curves and arches and diagonals of the striations here. Very, very beautifully done. And this has many, many layers too. It has front, some things in front. It has kind of a midsection. The background is very bland. And so, in my opinion, she wisely decided to minimize it and only to provide enough of the sky for us to understand there was a setting sun. There's so many things in the image that's wonderful. Sun stars, they should be pretty sharp. They don't have to be like blades, I don't believe, but you have to be able to recognize that they are, that the rays are rays, individual rays of the sun. And spirals are wonderful. Spirals, this has spirals and diagonals in it. And I set this up specifically for that reason, because I wanted the flowing tail to bring me up to the bird and have him off to the side where a diagonal branch also brings me to the bird. So there's a lot of careful consideration for how I was going to take this image. Leading lines, they're very, very powerful. Do not underestimate them. Use them, use them, use them as much as you can. Another lovely image from someone in your club who was at least once in your club, if not still is in your club. Now this is taken straight on, so you end up with a lot of horizontals and verticals, but you also end up with some wonderful shapes in here. And I don't know if you were able to see that, but I saw the two houses, and I know threes and the odds, a rule of odds, but you know what? It doesn't always have to be three. And I think what this ends up doing, and I think it's just because of the colors, and it gives you this kind of cross, this kind of big X across it that sections off your image and gives it order and motion. I just absolutely love it. And I tried to figure out why I liked it so much, because yes, fall is beautiful, but I think it's because of the shapes that I see in it. I see triangles, and here's some triangles in the trees and triangles on the roofs, and yes, those are there, but this is what happened. And I don't know if Patricia saw this kind of activity going on in the shapes, but when you train yourself to see those things, yeah, why did it get only a 15 something? Because I liked it so much. That's a very, very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. because I don't think I would have said. In my opinion, the judges may have said to themselves, well, this is fall, so I feel like there should be more drama in it. And I think the lighting is what might have brought it down in the judge's eyes, because it is basically front all over lighting. Nothing is particularly standing out except for the reflection in the water. That's quite spectacular. Maybe if it were cropped down, because it's also kind of in the middle, and maybe if it were cropped down from the top, because the top isn't the story, it's the reflection that's the story. So I'm so glad you have so much of it. But you take some of that top down, bring it down a little bit closer, then you're going to get a whole different ratio of reflection to the rest of the story, and the reflection will be more important. As far as the lighting, you could play with that in post, or you could just increase the contrast so that the dark areas get a little bit darker and the light areas get a little bit lighter. But it's going to be tough to do that. I mean, I would actually paint light into it in post-processing, because there's not a lot of soft shadow. There's some black and there's some middle tones, but there's not a lot in between in terms of light. Anyway, I could go on and on. We have an image critique in our club every month. And people put in their images and we critique their images, and we spend a lot of time at it, and we take them into Photoshop and we redo them and everything. And so I have to stop myself from going into that, because that's not what we're doing here. But that would be a wonderful function for your club, is to have that. And then for F3C, what I've tried to do, and I don't know how it's succeeding, we'll see, is that after every digital competition, I have two judges evaluate the non-winning images and explain, in their opinion, why the images didn't do as well as they should have. Sometimes they'll take a yellow ribbon image too. And those are videotaped and on the website under the word resources. It's called Image Review, and it's under resources on the website. And the first one was done by myself and a very experienced critiquer. So you might want to take a look at the first one. And then the second one is also excellent. It's just done with less experienced people in terms of doing this critiquing. But hopefully somebody will. Now the images are random because there's too many images to choose from. So the judges just choose the images they have something to say about. I think it's very educational. So what are we talking about? Which one are we on here? We're on, because this could be anything. Leading lines still, right? Yeah, it's still leading lines. I mean, this light in this is gorgeous. So it looks like what we have is a street light or a spotlight or a park light that's been left on and is illuminating this bird beautifully. And then you have the leading line of the branch that he's on. Then you also have sort of lines that move around that are similar lines. So it's not like this mess of lines everywhere. But you have these lines that are diagonal, that are bringing you back. You have these lines that are bringing you up, and then the lighting. And remember, I talked about a beautiful picture with just the same lighting throughout is less effective than a beautiful picture with some lighting that really shows up the subject or leads you to the subject. Lighting is huge. Pleasing color is also important. And so how do we get pleasing color? Well, that's a class on color itself. And sometimes natural colors that you grab outside when you're setting up your shot work out beautifully. They're just beautiful. Sometimes they need help. They need either an ND filter or a polarizing filter so that some of the colors don't come up stronger than the others. They need some balancing sometimes in post-processing. This one is just gorgeous. It's a complementary color scheme with the blue and amber, and it just really holds this picture together beautifully. This is very harsh color, and it's a very greenish yellow color, which is not very pleasing to dominate this. Very, very harsh. And it could be entered in a creative category. But even there, you have to think about, is this a pleasing experience for a judge? Will they appreciate this really off color, kind of almost a color cast of khaki green in it? So you've got to be careful with color. So we have this wonderful animal on the left that's so beautifully lit. Look at the beautiful lighting down the front of the animal and the eye. It's just perfectly lit. And the animal is looking off into the distance, and these wonderful whiskers are showing. What do you think is a problem with the color in this image? Use your chat. The green is too strong. Exactly. That is the answer. And green can get strong all by itself, especially in the bright light of the day. Or when you're going to process your image and you pull up the saturation a little because your little animal isn't showing much color, the green will come up too if you're globally saturating. And this green is just stealing all the attention, and not in a good way, away from this animal. The animal is beautifully exposed. So, unfortunately, there's two things that can improve it. One is that they could be out at a different time of day so that not everything is lit equally like the background. The other thing they could do is take this into post-processing and tone down that green. And you don't even have to select anything. You just choose the green color in your adjustment tools, and you lower it. You calm it down, cool it down. What do you think is amiss with the color in the picture on the right? Yeah, it's muddy. It's muddles. It's washed out. That's what it looks like. It looks washed out, doesn't it? Yeah, it's very dull. There's not enough of a dynamic range in light or color. And as cute as he is, that image really needs help. And you can see that that's not a pleasing visual experience for a judge. So if you look at the color wheel, and the color wheel that I always use is the artist's or the painter, it's an artist's color wheel, which has yellow. And then it's not always on the top, but let's say it's somewhere around the top. And then all of the yellows, oranges, and reds together. And these are the warm colors. And then you have the cool colors on the other side of the color wheel. And you can really work with simply knowing about warm and cool colors, because the nicest color schemes are when you cross that barrier from warm to cool so that you have both. So here are all the cool colors of this hummingbird. And the hummingbirds definitely prefer red, don't they? So we have the nice warm colors here as well. Here we have, oh, well, let's go over here. So that's a nice combination of cool and warm colors, and it happens to be a red-green color scheme for the most part, where the reds are here and the greens are back here. Although he's got lots of greens, but he also has some blues. And this one over here on the right, Phil's image, is a purple yellow color scheme. And that's a beautiful complementary color scheme. The yellow is the warmth and the coolness is everything around it, the purples and the blues. So if we look back here, the purple or violet, the violet yellow. This is actually, violet is actually on the cool side, because look at, this is where the temperature line is. And the yellow is on the warm side. So when you cross that yellow warm barrier, you get some really nice blue and orange or blue and amber. And it doesn't have to be exact. It can be sort of blues and sort of oranges. And then greens and reds I mentioned also. So the complementary color schemes, that's a real brief. And this is analogous. This is where the colors are all kind of touching each other. And that also makes a beautiful palette. And these are just examples of how you can use color. You can either bring it out, or you could choose it, or you could find it in nature and in life. It ends up being a really effective way to have a pleasing image. So here's two pictures of a flamingo, and one of them is clearly better than the other. So the question is, why? Why would a judge prefer this one more? And so start putting some of your answers in there. Why would the judge prefer that more? All right. Yeah, the blacks do make that's a very effective, but you've got to do that well. If you want a black background and you haven't got a black background to begin with, you really have to learn how to select and do that well. Okay. Yeah, this one is very dull. It's dull. It might have been taken with a cell phone or a quick JPEG grab. I don't know why it's so dull. The tail is cut off, clipped off, whereas this is consciously cropped. The one on the right, consciously cropped, so you could focus on this wonderful leading line into the eye. The color, this is an acceptable color for a flamingo. In the sun, they are this color. They are quite beautiful. Yes, the cropping, the framing and the cropping is completely different. The eye is in focus. Yeah, the eye, you can really see the eye. Beautiful, absolutely. It's a simpler composition. Yeah, sometimes that goes far. Yes, the lighting. All right, so there is lighting on this bird, but it really wasn't taken advantage of. It kind of goes across, and I'm talking about the left, goes on his head and it goes across his wing. Unfortunately, it's coming from the right, so you're seeing a shadow in the eye. This one, the lighting is very clear. The brighter light is substantially brighter than the shadows. So that you're getting a beautiful dynamic range here of light. It's beautiful. If you know Ansel Adams' 10 or 11 point range, I mean, you have some very dark light in here where the feathers, and darkness here where the shadows are. And then you have beautiful white feathers of lots of different lightnesses, but none of it's blown out. Just very, very well done. I mean, sometimes you can have a little tiny, little areas where you don't see detail, that's not a problem. Pumping up the blacks make the color stand out. Well, I do think having a black background definitely makes the color stand out, or darkening the background. It definitely does. It's not the only way to take a picture of a bird, you know, but because in situ and background can be very interesting if you can get a good one in nature. All right, what about these two? What about the color in particular? They're both of a swamp, right? Maybe even Louisiana swamps, where I'm going in November. But one of them clearly grabs the eye and has beautiful impact. The one on the left, yes, it's a little bit more, certainly looks more cluttered. It still has the repeating stands of the trees, but it doesn't stand out. Nothing stands out very, very well from itself, because it's really a very muted palette of greens and beiges and browns and yellows. It's not very colorful at all. This one, it's not that it's colorful, it's that the places where the color are beautiful. The orange is just a touch of it, and yet it's gorgeous. And then there's a differentiation between other areas. So the color isn't strong everywhere. It's strong only in certain places. And it's got a beautiful color scheme. It's got the blues and greens, and it's got the reds and oranges, if you will. So it's a fairly simple color scheme. And they looked long and hard to find an area that wasn't quite as cluttered as this. I don't think the one on the left is going to make it. And no matter how big you make it, it's just, it needs a lot of finishing touches. It needs love. Or you could have a color cast on an image. Watch out for color casts. There was a lot of blue in this picture, and it's a great documentary shot, but it is way blue. Everything is blue. You got to cut back that color cast, either by changing the white balance in your post-processing, or you could do it in camera too, but be careful with that. I don't tend not to mess with that. But if you're just an in-camera person, then you would have to learn how to do that in camera. Take the right setting in your white balance, so you won't get this overarching blue or this overarching yellow, which isn't even yellow. It's a greenish yellow. It's that khaki yellow. It's that muddy yellow. So, you know, there's a million reasons why casts can come on the pictures. Can be, I mean, the lighting there is definitely one of them, but it's also your settings. Not everybody who takes a picture of a great blue has this kind of purplish blue cast everywhere with no whites showing. So color cast is another important thing. Now that leads me right into what to avoid. I find that I think people learn best. I know I do, and a lot of people I know learn best when you tell them, this is what I mean, and this is what I think is good, and then this is what I think is really bad. And so this is the section where I talk about what's really bad and what's going to take your images down: over sharpening, oversaturating, dark vignettes, cut off limbs, poorly located blur, crooked horizons and buildings, noise and dirt, poor light on the subject. And we'll spend a little bit more time on light. And I have been, how long have I been going for? I am planning to finish at 7:30 and no later. I hope that that's okay. So if you need to stand up, please do so in your, okay, so this is what I call over sharpening. Everything in the image is sharpened equally. It's cutting grooves in my eyeballs. It's so sharp that it just looks like a bunch of texture. Whereas the one on the right is a story. Now, some of it could have been sharpened even more. Yes, I grant that. But it has some softness and it has some sharpness. And that's the good balance. Okay, harsh, oversaturating. Now in F3C, we do have now a new category called interpretive. And the reason, the primary reason that we instituted this category is because people go slider crazy. They go slider crazy and things get out of control. And then what do I do? Say, oh my God, this isn't natural and realistic. Well, to me it is, So, okay, if you have an image that really doesn't look natural or realistic, according to our competition committee, of course, it goes in interpretive. And it can compete with other images like that in interpretive. But we're trying to keep our color category pure. You need to get a really good image by being a really good photographer and processor and having good judgment about the settings and the lenses and everything that you're using, not by being a good slider. And I hope you all know what I mean by that. The adjustments in post-processing often come on sliders in Lightroom and Photoshop, and you can adjust it saturated or less saturated, sharp or less sharp, bright or less bright. Don't go nuts. Okay, beautiful image. As opposed to this, there's all this delightful bright color in the front that just gives this beautiful decorative frame to these undulating mountains in the background. Okay. And there you see the big differences in sharpness and color, depending on how close up the objects are. As they go farther away, they do get less bright. They do get more muted. And it's just to me, this is a beautiful job done with color. Vignettes. Be careful with your vignettes. What ends up happening is that they take over. Okay, they take over. So that's why I call it a see-me vignette. I didn't flatter this butterfly with that vignette. So just be careful with them, and don't clip your tails and get too close to the edges with your main subject. Give them some space. Give them some space. This is why I call poorly located blur. The whole horse is blurry. You're showing motion blur, but you got to have something in. I mean, that's what taking a picture is. It's picking something that you want to highlight and show, and giving something the person can engage with. And it's all blurry and soft, and all blurry and soft where it should be bright. Just the nose is sharp. Well, the eye is very, very important here, and that's very blurry also. So just be careful of where. And there's a straighten tool in Photoshop and in Lightroom, and even if you don't use it, even if you're sitting there with a T-square or a graph paper, get your horizons straight. That's important. And with buildings and architecture, you can make one that's slanted back to get a different view. But if it's just slightly off, like this is, just slightly crooked, that's just so annoying. It's not going to win you any points. Noise and dust. Blue will grab noise. And no matter what you do, you could be a great person in camera out there in the field. You bring home this picture, maybe it was a little bit dark when you took it. The blue will grab that noise, those speckles, and won't let it go. And you're going to have to do something in post-processing if you have a picture with a lot of dust or a lot of noise, it's not going to do well. It definitely won't do well. Even a little bit. You want to make sure that, especially your skies, don't have this awful greeny look to it. And then light. So the thing about light, good light is a subject well lit. Doesn't have to be the whole subject. Directional light, coming from the side, coming from the back even, but then you need to make sure that you know what you're doing with backlighting, but coming from the side, directional light is the best light. Mood light created by nature is the best light. Poor light is flat, overexposed, or underexposed, right? So this one is backlit, but there was no consideration taken for the fact that we need the face. This one is overexposed in the white wing. Too much of this wing is white. And this one, it's basically straight on flat lighting, and no accommodation was made for the dark rocks underneath and for how quickly the light, kind of flashed out on the bright areas. So it's over and underexposed. So the purpose, why do you want good light? You want you want to set the subject off, you want to set the tone, you want to direct the eye with light, you want to give depth in the image, and of course interest. And so you can take an image in the middle of the day and you can still play with light. This mother polar bear was providing shade on herself and a little bit on the cubs, so that you got these beautiful faces that were lit. And then you get the contrast of the shadowy, the side of the mother. In this case, just that rim light on the front of the bird is just stunning. And then, of course, the important parts of the bird, the face, the leg, they're all lit too. Just good light, both of those. Beautiful light here. The important place is the story is about the egg and the parent. So the face of the parent and the egg are the important things that need to be lit. It's nice that this isn't shockingly white in your face, this area here, because that would have taken a lot of attention away from the face. What can you say, right? This was side lighting, and she took it straight on and got these gorgeous hills and valleys. So once again, you take Ansel Adams scale, and you've got everything in here. Not that you have to for every subject, but you've got black and you've got white, and you've got lots of grays, the dark grays, the lighter grays, the bright grays. It's just really gorgeous. It just shows why people should use black and white sometimes, because you can show texture and light and curve. Okay. So just help me with these images. This is a great idea. Got lots of problems. What's the first problem? And we're not doing critiquing, so that isn't what we're doing. We're looking for the problems in some of these images. The green is too bright. Yeah, the background is too bright. It's a very bright time of day, and it's going to be really hard to keep that green in control. What's soft is the subject. The bird is soft. The birds are soft. They're blurry. They're soft. Yes. Yeah, you're getting it. The subject's positions are actually very good, because there's a kind of a little mirror of the big bird, even though they are different birds, kind of folding into each other. And I really liked that. I thought that was one of the successful parts of the image. It's really hard to find a successful part sometimes when the light is off and the colors are too bright. But you can see that the green of the leaves is very bright. The blue of the birds is not that bright. And that's what happens in the middle of the day. You know, it picks up anything with yellow, which green has a lot of, and makes it very bright. Okay, what about this one? What do you think of the light on it, first of all? Shadow on the boy's face, side light. Yeah. Catch light in the eyes. Yeah. Catch light, catch light, catch light, catch light. Of course, the outer eyes where they're not shadowing each other is brighter, which is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. They do shadow each other a little bit, but that's nice. It's very nice because what you end up getting is two pictures with the almost a traditional half light on the faces. The light on this side is got his right cheek all lit up, and the light is falling on this fellow beautifully, falling across his gorgeous hair, giving a little light into his face, getting a nice cheek with light on it, maybe a 3/4 light. I don't see those shadows. I think that's just the picture ends here that you're mentioning. So I consider this just beautifully done. If it were a little bit more dramatic, it might actually do better in competition. In other words, if you you brought up brought down the shadows and actually created even more shadowing in their faces to show the contour of the faces, because judges do like that. But I think it's masterfully done, just beautiful. Okay, how about this one? Well, maybe I'll go to this one. The eye is sharp. The shadows need lightening. Yes, the shadows are way too dark, way too dark. And if you look at a lot of excellent pictures, it will hit you right away. Okay. Excellent eagle pictures show the gorgeous markings, the lights and the darks. And this one is just very, very dark. You definitely need more detail in the feathers. Yes. It's a great pose. There's no noise in the sky, but the body is really too dark. You want to see the detail in dark. Okay, let's look at this one. Do you need more detail on the feathers in this one? I don't think so. Kind of in your face. But the detail and the color and the feathers is amazing. There is a very dark vignette that I don't like. Yeah. The tail actually is not cut off unless that's the cutting off to prevent him from flying. That's a natural part of this particular bird. Yeah, the background is the problem. That is really the problem, because the color in the bird is just absolutely gorgeous, and he's pretty sharp. The eye is sufficiently sharp. The background is grabbing all of the attention. It's got color, it's got light, it's got shape. It's just way too much. And so what do? Do you not take a picture of this incredibly gorgeous rooster? No, you follow him and you wait for him to get into a place where you don't have this awful background. Okay. What about this one? Overall, it is too bright, and you've lost detail in the whites. That's right. That's right. That's right. The green is very bright. Another daytime picture. The center is not focused. critical that that be focused. That is a problem, a real problem. It has some nice possibilities. It's got a nice kind of a platform that it's on. You could probably take away the whole lower part of the picture. The fact that it's not captured, it's not focused in the center, it just makes it a throwaway picture, because there's nothing, you're not going to be able to get that detail back. That detail is gone. There's so much beautiful detail in there. Okay, so I'm going to stop share now, and why don't we open up the mics, and I'll take any questions, any desire for clarification, anything at all that you want to ask. Oh, I'm seeing the other comments now. So you can comment, just open up your mic and go ahead and ask if you have anything that you want to ask. Was that all perfectly crystal clear? Did the examples help?
I'm glad you didn't use any of my pictures and what not to do.
I generally try to, you mean not even your good pictures? Not even your good pictures?
No, I said, and what not to do.
Oh, and what not to do. Okay, yeah. I generally try to avoid that. I didn't use any of a Beach's what not to do picture, did I?
I didn't say
I think
it.
so. Very nice.
I don't think so. I'm usually pretty good about that, but I am
And we
gaining.
thank you.
I mean, I wouldn't want that. You know, I wouldn't want. I use a lot of my own images, or images I find on the online, you know, that are free. But they really do help explain. And it's
I thought the images were helpful. My problem is remembering that all of the things you presented, and then the images, and then when I go out to take a picture, remembering them.
Well, that's true. Now, so when you go out, I used to bring out cheat sheets with me. I used to bring out little index cards. And if I was going out for landscapes, I would put down the things that are only important for landscapes. Or if I had a chronic problem, you know, like if I, oh God, what would be a chronic problem that I've had in the past? I didn't get enough light. I didn't get enough light. You know, it's better to shoot lighter so you can get the detail and work with it in post. But if you don't get enough light, then you can't. You've lost the detail in the darks, and that will ruin a good bird any day of the week. But you know, so you have to work on things. I think you have to work on things intentionally and consciously. I don't think you can just listen to something and then go out and get better. I think you have to set a goal for yourself, write down what's critical for yourself, you know, and maybe work on something different every week or something. That would be a good idea. Just work on something different every week.
Thanks.
So for competitions, if you use different techniques such as HDR, focus stacking, other maybe in camera or post-processing type techniques like that, how do those images stack up to a judge versus just a straight out of camera?
Well, it differs between competitions. In F3C and in our club, which uses the same guidelines, you in the color category, you can do anything you want to an image, anything you want to the image, as long as the image represents a naturally appearing scene or animal, and it's realistic. Natural and realistic is the key. As soon as you get too saturated, or if you have messy processing, or if something is unlikely, you know, that it's going to be questioned, that's when you want to reconsider whether it should be in the color category. So if you want to use HDR, use it to your heart's delight. But a lot of people don't realize that HDR isn't, in fact, I have a presentation I'm going to give to my image critique group, because people abuse HDR. You know, unfortunately, the stupid program, and I should send a letter, right? All the letters you should send in your life. If you use the Photomatics or any other automatic program, the image that it brings up is not, it's usually too grungy. It looks too harsh and too, you know, and you have to modify it. You can't just take it as it is. You can use HDR, and no one would ever know. And that's fine. No one would ever know, because that really is what it's for. It's for you to grab more of the dynamic range of light and color as a result. You sometimes have to do that. You sometimes have to take a dark picture, a medium picture, and a too bright picture, at least 3, and put them together in either in Photoshop or in a program like Photomatics. And you can really get some beautiful results out of that, even though you were there at midday, you know, and you didn't have a lot of great light, or if it was a somewhat, you know, foggy day.
I would volunteer that the HDR in Lightroom gives you a more natural result to start with, and does a pretty good job.
Good. That's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, you really have to, if you use the Photomatics, you have to find a choice that is realistic, that's natural, that's beautiful, and does not look processed. Yeah.
So I have a question. You had one of my images actually got questioned in documentary. If you remember, because the fourth subject and the back subject were out of focus, and they questioned whether I could do that or not. What kind of, when you're doing a documentary, what kind of things do they look for to say, oh, maybe that's not a real image?
Oh, you mean the approval committee?
Yeah.
Well, as it says in the rules, some of this is the maker's honor at stake, because you can't tell everything. You can't guess at everything. It's not going to work. Technology is so good, and the better you are at it, the more you can hide things. But if we suspect in documentary, especially, that something has been processed separately, that's the big difference. It's a big difference between that category and all the others. You can make global adjustments. I mean, people take pictures in RAW, and you have to make global adjustments because it doesn't come in at its best. So you can make global adjustments. The whole thing can be lighter or brighter, and maybe a little bit more contrast, or maybe less colorful, maybe whatever. But you can't isolate something. You can't isolate something and do something with that only. So if it looks like that's been done, it'll be questioned.
Okay. That was the way the picture came out. It wasn't done that way. So that's what kind of threw me.
Well, you know, as long as the person answers the question, I mean, the question is to help you and to help us keep the competition credible and fair. But I will often ask, how did you get this? Or how did you go through, that, to find out, because a lot of people also don't understand the categories. So they don't know that the image should be in another category. And if a judge sees it, I mean, I knock out a lot of what would be marked down just by going through the approval process. This isn't going to work in this category because doesn't even conform to the rules. So it's really for your benefit and the image's benefit.
Gotcha.
No masking, what does that mean, Marianne? No masking in documentary, in our documentary. I don't know about your documentary, but no, you can't mask anything out or in, or no.
You can crop and adjust the colors.
Yes. And it says specifically in the rules, but it has to be global. It can't be,
Right.
okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, it's 7:33 and I know you're dying for that cold beer and I'm dying for my cold wine. Oh, damn. Do I have any more? Oh, I hate it when you finish a bottle and you forget to get another one. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. Oh, God.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for all of this information. It's been very wonderful to hear what you're thinking about all these different photos and how we should approach ours before we submit for competition.
Well, I wish you all the very best of luck. And, you know, what else can I say?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you
on
very
behalf of
much.
the whole club.
Thanks.
you.
Thank
you.
Okay, so I'm going to take off now and you can.
Okay. And I'm going to end the meeting because you were the show. So
Oh, all right.
everybody
Okay.
enjoy your evening. All right.
Okay, great.
Right.
Enjoy yourselves.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.